This is a Honda NSX, and I have been desperate to drive one since collecting all the different variants on Gran Turismo 4 as a 12-year-old. But apparently that isn't a good enough reason to go out and drive a car that you can't really buy anymore. So how about this? The new Honda NSX was considered to be a bit of a letdown compared to the legacy left by the car we have here today. So it's about time we found out what made the original NSX so special, and if people just look at it with rose-tinted glasses. Yes. Anyway, you know what to do by now. Hit the thumbs up button if you like what you see, and subscribe for more awesome videos just like this one. First, a bit of history. The NSX was launched back in 1990 as a way of linking Honda's Formula One efforts with its production cars. And we've got to bear in mind that this time, Honda wasn't known for performance cars at all. It only really made the Civic. And it kind of looked a bit strange that it was entering Formula One and doing very well at it. So the NSX filled the gap. In fact, they even enlisted Ayrton Senna, who was a McLaren driver at the time. McLaren used Honda engines to help with the car's development. Senna wasn't all that keen when he first drove the NSX, pointing to a lack of rigidity. So Honda went away, worked on the NSX, and then improved rigidity by 50%, at which point it got the Senna seal of approval. In 2002, Honda introduced a facelift, and that's the model that you see right here. And it actually came with some quite big improvements. So they got rid of the pop-up headlights. Instead, you have the fixed xenon headlights that you see here. Not quite as characterful, but I still think it makes the car look fantastic. A new front bumper design. The wheels are new as well, 17 inches on this car. I believe the originals were 15s. Slight tweak to the rear wing, and there was also a new suspension setup as well, which was a little bit stiffer than the car that came before. So what does NSX stand for? Well, it means New Sports Car Unknown World, which is a bit strange. So the X is meant to be like the X in mathematics, representing an unknown variable. In America, however, the X was marketed as experimental, which makes a lot more sense. And on the new NSX, it means something a little bit different. It stands for New Sports Car Experience, because hybrid is a new experience and all that. The 2002 facelift may have brought quite a few visual changes, but the cabin barely got anything significant. This is a wonderfully old school interior. These big chunky buttons, for instance, are very early 90s, and the quality of the plastics would have been pretty rubbish even by 2002 standards. The air conditioning vents are located on the inside of the door because it's so tightly packaged in here. You usually get your regular set of windscreen wiper and indicator stalks, but there's also a second set of stalks for the lights and cruise control, and also the ugliest hazard lights button I've ever seen. You could get a CD changer, but this one comes with a cassette player as standard. And bear in mind, the NSX was discontinued in 2005. Quirks aside, the cabin is refreshingly simple and surprisingly easy to see out of. The dashboard is really low, and you've got this big windscreen. And bearing in mind that the NSX is quite a dinky little car, it feels very airy and bright in here. There's no usable storage at the front of the car. We've just got a space saver wheel and the air conditioning. However, the battery placement is quite interesting because it's not up here, so it's easy to get to. It's tucked really low down and right to the back near the cabin for better weight distribution. Also, there's no lining under the bonnet, but what Honda's done is it's put the arrow to show you where to put the bonnet prop actually integrated into the bonnet. Once you find the button to open the boot, which is for some reason located on the inside of the driver's door, you'll discover that there's actually quite a lot of space in the back of the NSX. Plenty of space for a couple of suitcases, so you and a partner or friend can go away for a weekend in your retro Japanese supercar, sports car thing. What's pretty cool is you can see the bolts for the wing on the underside of the boot lid. It just shows that Honda either was really focused on making a performance car or didn't really care, thought people aren't going to see that and it would save them a bit of money. Unlike supercars of this era, the NSX doesn't show off its engine. It's actually covered up by this engine cover here. So although we have a glass window at the back, you can't peer through and see the motor. Although there's not a lot to look at, it's still a pretty impressive motor. It Launched in 1990 as a 3-litre naturally aspirated V6, but in 97 it grew to 3.2 litres and power increased from 270 to 290 bhp. Like a proper supercar, it's rear-wheel drive, but you've got a choice of either a manual or automatic gearbox. Now, I can understand why some people would go for the auto, either because they don't like changing gear or they physically can't do it, but luckily this is the manual and is therefore the most engaging. It also is a lot more expensive if you buy one on the used market. You usually pay double the amount for a manual car over the automatic. So I probably won't ever be able to afford one of these, so I think it's time we go and see what it's like on the road. I've just been filming for 15 minutes and my microphone recorded nothing. I would usually be livid in most instances, but not at the moment because it means I get to do it all again in the NSX, and that makes me very happy. And this is very much a case of meet your heroes because the NSX is a proper hero car of mine, and now that I'm driving one, it more than lives up to the expectations. It's staggering. And pretty eye-opening as well. I'm really fortunate that I get to drive a lot of new cars. But this shows me that the people who were rich in the 90s and early 2000s really had it very good, and I'm kind of jealous of them. What's really striking before you fire up that engine is the visibility. I can't believe a car of this age and era is so easy to use. There's just so much light, and it also provides this feeling of like you're visually over the front wheels, as if you're the first point of contact with the road, but physically you feel like you're in the middle of the car, which is absolutely where you want to be. But enough about the practicality side. The engine. Holy. Right. So, the Honda NSX was the first car to introduce VTEC to a V6 engine. So what that means is that yes, we've got something with quite a fair bit of torque low down the rev range, but around 5,000 RPM, this thing sings. Quite literally as well. The sound you get when you get higher up the rev range is one of the greatest engine sounds I have ever heard. It reminds me a lot of the Porsche Cayman GT4 that we drove recently. In fact, you can watch that by clicking the link in the top right-hand corner. But unlike the Cayman GT4, which has such long gearing that it feels like it's only really usable in first and second gear or low down the rev range, the NSX can be enjoyed wherever you are. You're on a B road and the limit is 50 miles an hour, well, you're still going to hear this thing sing. And because it's old, it's light and obviously doesn't have a lot of safety equipment, but it just feels like a really lightweight thing. So easy and eager to maneuver. And couple that with a healthy 290 horsepower and a manual gearbox, you've got a great driver's car. Although the motor sounds very modern, there are some things in here that make it feel quite old, aside from the interior. First of all, the pedals are super heavy. Now, I quite like that, because it feels more physical and mechanical. If you like modern manual cars, then I think this is going to give you a bit of a culture shock because it's nowhere near as forgiving. You've really got to put some effort into changing gear. It's got a really short throw, but the two combined can be quite a physical experience, which, if you're like me, is pretty damn good. What I find a bit of a letdown though is the steering. Now, this is a Honda heritage car, so it's looked after by the company, it gets the best service. If it needs anything replacing, it's done instantly, and sometimes with a better part. So I don't really know how this compares with a completely stock, as new NSX. But I find the steering just doesn't match the physicality of the pedals and the gear change. It just feels a little bit on the light side, lacking communication. There's feedback there, I just want a bit more of it. Driving the NSX has made me realise a few things. You don't need a lot of power to have fun you do need a great noise. I'm having way more fun in here than I have done in an electric car. I'm sorry, EV lovers. And the third thing is that you can't really compare it with the new NSX because they're very different cars. And I think this is kind of the problem of calling the new version the NSX. This is all about the driver. It's a great driving experience. It's a visceral driving experience. And it's a raw one. Whereas the new car is all about power and grip. And as someone who loves driving, this NSX really is the real deal. So I guess it all comes down to price. Now, from what I can tell, the NSX cost $62,000 when new in 1990, and in today's money, that's around $120,000 or £87,000. The thing is though, if one of these were to pop up on YesAuto.co.uk and it was a manual version, you could be paying in excess of £100,000 for a relatively low mileage example. And for that kind of money, you could buy a used version of the new NSX. But I think if I had £100,000 to buy a Honda, I think I know which one I would go for. It's this one.